I learned a lot in the last 10 years of having my own handmade laser business, but not everything I learned came from things that went right. So let me save you some time and tell you all those tasty business nuggets I learned, and maybe you can end up like me someday. When you're thinking about the products you're going to be selling, think first about who your customer is going to be. Have you ever just walked into a restaurant and the waiter is just like, "What do you want?" And you're like, "Well, what do you have?" And they're like, "Anything, I can make you anything. Just tell me what you want." You're probably not going to go to that restaurant very often. When you're hungry, you first think, I'm getting hungry. Maybe I'll have something Italian. Let's go to an Italian restaurant. And you go to the restaurant and they hand you a menu, and now you have all these options to choose from. And maybe you thought I was going to get ravioli and you decide on lasagna because it just looks so good on the menu. That is actually you going through a sales funnel without even realizing it. Now, I don't mean to just get you hungry. Here are some examples that are laser related. In this first option, let's say you've decided to make an ornament store. You then give your customer a whole bunch of choices of fun ornaments, and then they choose the dog ornament. Or you could make a dog store with a whole bunch of dog-related items in it, and when the customer walks in, they are given a bunch of dog choices, and then they just so happen to choose the dog ornament. So what really would have changed for me back in the beginning is figuring out if I wanted to be a product maker of ornaments that I can find customers whose interests also overlap with dogs or beer or nursing or babies. Or if I wanted to focus on dog people who also overlap in maybe needing ornaments or pet tags or frames or keychains. As a small business, you don't want to try to come off like you're Walmart and sell everything there possibly is. Just like you probably don't want to go to a restaurant that sells pizza, gourmet chocolates, and sushi. Not only because it is confusing your customers, but because Gordon Ramsay will absolutely yell at you.
Why are you here?
I think I started my laser business the same way everybody else does. I made coasters and signs and engraved boxes and just hoped something would sell. And sometimes I did sell things, which was awesome. And for the people who were a little on the edge, I would approach them and say, "I can put anything on this for you, anything in the world. You just let me know, here's my card." And I would never hear from them again. Which brings me to my next point. Look through the eyes of your customer. As a small business, we don't have millions and millions of dollars to do product research, finding our perfect customer and advertising to them perfectly. But we can kind of just take a step back, think about it, and do the best we can. Using what we learned in the last section, let's say you've narrowed down what you want to make into funny cutting boards. You don't want to customize them, you just want to make cutting boards, put a funny little phrase on there, and sell them to people. Your ideal customer is probably a person with a good sense of humor who has cooking interests, or someone who wants to give a funny gift to someone who likes to eat, for example. Now, years go by and congratulations, you have made a name for yourself as the funny cutting board guy. Congratulations, you did it. But now you're getting a little bored and you want to expand your product line, and you think, people who have a sense of humor and like to cook probably have keys because they have cars and live places and whatever. So I'm going to start making keychains. I could take the same designs and put them on keychains and people will love it, right? Well,
why are you here?
So let me tell you my story. I make weird laser cut jewelry, and years into it, I was getting a little bit bored, and I have interests in making all sorts of things. So I started making little lip balms and oils and soaps and perfumes and stuff like that, and started trying to sell it, and nobody wanted it. Nobody cared at all. I had it on my website, on my Etsy. I would take them to craft shows and stuff with me, and people would be like, "Oh, really cool jewelry." And I'm like, "Yes, and here's my new soaps." And they're like, "Neat."
Wow.
And so I stopped selling it, and it took me years to get through all that soap, although I still, I guess, smell pretty good from it, so I can be grateful for that. However, it's like if your favorite pretzel brand started selling chips, that wouldn't be so weird, but if they started promoting to you their new brand of motor oil, you might kind of be like, No, I'm not saying you can't sell cutting boards and keychains, but from the customer's perspective, it's a little bit easier for them to digest Amy's funny cutting board company and Amy's funny keychain company from Amy's baking company. Man, I really have Gordon Ramsay on the mind, but I think I can turn this into a segue. You know, those episodes where Gordon Ramsay's trying to find a restaurant and he can't even find it, he just drives right past it? You have to sell where your customers are buying. I know what you're thinking, duh. Of course, I have to do that, but let me give you a few examples where your intentions might be good, but you might miss the mark a little bit. In the first 5 years of my laser business experience, I sold everywhere. I sold on a table on the sidewalk in front of a record store. I did a flea market. I've done Comic-Cons and craft fairs galore. And some I did really good at, and some were an absolute waste of my time. Here's an example where someone had the right intentions, but it just wasn't the right market. I was doing a Comic-Con-like event at a local school, and it was just a charitable event for the after-school programs for the kids. There was a person who had a booth across from me with the most beautiful, handcrafted, amazing, one-of-a-kind pop culture clocks. They were stunning. It drew people in from any other point of the gymnasium. And at the end of the show, I asked him, "How'd you do? These are so amazing." And he said, "I didn't sell a single thing, not one." And we were talking about it and came to the realization that the people who were going to this event were pretty much like 11-year-olds who were dropped off by their parents and given $5. They are not quite in the market for a $200 work of art, as opposed to, say, a real Comic-Con in the city, thousands of people where there's maybe 20-year-olds with disposable incomes walking around just going nuts with their credit card. So even though it was the right theme, it wasn't quite the right event. And that has happened to me plenty of times, even specifically that flea market I mentioned before. They had a superhero weekend and I didn't sell a single thing. I ended up leaving early. It was just that bad because the people who are going to a flea market are not looking for anything new, anything $20 even. Everyone's trying to haggle me. It was an absolute mess, and I learned a lot from it. Of course, there's a lot of hit or miss that you can only find out by trying it, but I encourage you not to throw down $1,000 for a table at this huge event that might not be the best place for you to sell at. Here's another hot tip. Don't make things for a specific event. Find events that you can sell the things you already make. I went to a cat expo recently, which I love cats if you don't already know, and I did see a lot of that. Just people slapping a cat on the side of a bag or a box or whatever. And over the years, I've really come to realize that you don't stand out when you're doing what everybody else is doing. Which goes back to that example from before. So you make these funny cutting boards and you want to sell them at an event. Your choices are the Woodworkers Expo, the Downtown Food Fest, or the church craft sale. Which one do you think you'd make the most at? Now, you absolutely might make money at every single one of these, but I have a feeling you are going to make the most money at the Downtown Food Fest. Now that I brought up food again, you're probably thinking I'm gonna bring up Gordon Ramsay, but I'm not. Does that count?
Bloody hell.
Now, don't get mad at me for this one, but you are probably not charging enough for your products. I know, I've heard it before, you've heard it before. It's something I still struggle with, honestly. I wish I had a magic equation for you so we can easily price our products, but I absolutely do have an equation for you, and here it is. For this equation, we are going to need to know the cost of materials, and by that I mean the materials as well as any fees and overhead you might have, and what we add to that is how much you want to get paid. And of course we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of what people are willing to pay, but that is essentially the cost for your product. I get it. It seems like it should be more complicated. You've seen those same equations where they talk about overhead and cost of materials and how much you want to be paid every hour, but I'm telling you, don't even worry about it. It's really just how much money do you want to make? I'm not even joking, and I can prove it to you. These scrunchies right here are from Louis Vuitton, and I'm going to give you 1 second to guess how much they are. Nope, they are $405. for 2 scrunchies. There's no equation that can tell me these are supposed to be $405. The cost of material, the labor, the advertising, the overhead, none of that. When I started, my prices were literally just like so cheap. They were, this is a hobby, I'm just a crafter. Just give me, I don't know, $6. That's great, thanks. And when I wanted to turn it into a business, I found not only did I need to charge more because of all the overhead and stuff, but I needed to charge more if I was going to let people know that I was an actual business. Now, once I figured out I was just far too cheap, brings me into my next point. And that is, you don't have to do wholesale or custom orders. When someone approached me to do wholesale, I was all for it. I decided on minimum order amounts, and I was taking off about 40% of my normal cost for these wholesale orders. So if something was $10, I'd be selling it to them for $6, but they would have to buy like 10 of something, and then I'd be like $60, boom, boom, right? And it dawned on me, I was working just as hard to stock my online store or an event booth as I was for these orders, but I wasn't getting paid as much to do it. Of course, it's a quantity-based thing, so maybe the products you sell are easier to make than me, and you could just whip them out and money's coming in, and that is awesome. Speaking of all the time these wholesale orders were taking me, that's also why I stopped doing custom orders. In the beginning, I messed up how I did custom orders really bad. I would sell my earrings for about 15 bucks, and then someone would approach me and be like, I see you make earrings, can you make me these? And I would agree, and I would just charge them like 15 bucks because I'm like, that's how much they probably would be wanting to pay. And it would take me all of these hours, and I decided, well, I gotta start charging more, obviously. And it still wasn't even enough. I was just charging like $5 extra, and I'm like, it took me 2 hours to design these and to make them, and I only got paid $5 more. That's not worth it. So by the time I got to the point I was charging for graphic design time, file creation fees, these custom earrings I was making for people were getting to be about $100, and they were like, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, well, during the 4 hours of us corresponding, me designing and making the thing, I could be making a whole bunch more merchandise for me to sell at these events and online. And what's more worth my time? So I pretty much just was like, custom work, I'm over it. I can say that I am living a little bit more stress-free these days. So if something is not worth your time, just get rid of it. You can be utilizing those hours into creating an awesome campaign on your Instagram or creating new products that might be your next big hit. Time equals money, which is why it's so important for you to focus your time selling where it makes the most sense, which is why I made this video right here. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in that one.